All right, today we're pulling back the curtain on the global economy, and we're going to uncover a hidden architecture, one where the real power players, the ones calling the shots, aren't the central bankers you see on TV. Nope, they're intelligence agencies. So let's dive into how this all works.
This quote, wow, it really just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly sums up this idea that when it comes to global finance, there are basically two stories being told at the same time. You've got the one we all hear about, the one on the news, full of predictable data and terms we all know. But then there's the real story, the one that's actually directing where all the money in the world goes, written by hands we never get to see.
And this right here, this really lays it all out. On one side, you've got that public script we were just talking about, all the stuff you see in the financial news. But over on the other side, that's the invisible script. And that is what we're digging into today. This hidden system, the one quietly built by intelligence agencies, that basically manages the entire financial plumbing of the world.
Okay, so when you think of agencies like the CIA or MI6, what comes to mind? Probably a James Bond movie, right? Dead drops, secret agents in trench coats, all that Cold War thriller stuff. Well, you kind of have to throw that old image out the window, because in the 21st century, their role has shifted dramatically. Their most powerful, most effective operations, they're happening in the world of finance. We hear this term economic statecraft thrown around a lot, and usually it means things like official sanctions you read about in the headlines. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The real power, the most potent version of this, it happens in the shadows. See, today, these agencies, they're not just watching the markets from the sidelines. No, they're actively curating the entire environment where those markets operate. It's like they're setting the rules of the game before the players even show up.
So the big question is, how? How do they actually pull this off? What kind of tools are in this invisible financial toolkit? Well, let's break it down and look at the mechanics behind all this hidden power.
Okay, so it all starts with something called information asymmetry. And really, it's pretty simple. In the world of finance, having faster, better information is everything. It's the ultimate edge. For an intelligence agency, getting that kind of top-tier information isn't just a bonus, it's their main product. Think about it. They can pinpoint an economic weak spot in a rival nation, let's say a fragile link in their semiconductor supply chain, way before anyone in the market has even a whisper of a clue.
And having that information edge leads directly to the next tool in their arsenal. You see, markets aren't these perfectly rational machines. Not at all. They're deeply psychological. They run on two things, fear and greed. And this is where intelligence agencies really shine, because they are absolute masters of something called perception management. By strategically leaking a piece of information here or suppressing another piece over there, they can literally shape market psychology and steer investor behavior on a global scale.
So when you put all this together, you get a very powerful, repeatable playbook. It goes something like this. Step 1. An agency uses its assets to create a sort of controlled crisis in a competing market. Just imagine a few well-placed rumors, a whisper campaign about political instability in a country whose currency is getting a little too strong for comfort. Step 2. This immediately triggers what's called a flight to safety. Investors panic and start pulling their money out. And step 3. Where does all that money go? It floods right back into what everyone sees as safe Western markets, like U.S. Treasury bonds. It's the ultimate dopamine hit for investors, that feeling of safety and security, all created by a force they can't even see.
And it's interesting, because different agencies kind of specialize. They have these distinct but complementary roles. Take MI6. With its deep roots in London's financial world and all those offshore hubs, it basically acts as the UK's financial radar. The CIA, on the other hand, is laser-focused on keeping the US dollar as the world's go-to currency, the cleanest dirty shirt, as they say. And a huge part of that is making sure that crucial things, like oil, are always priced in dollars. That creates this constant, built-in global demand for the dollar, which is like a life support system for the economy.
Okay, now all of this leads us to a pretty radical idea. A really provocative question that completely reframes how we should be thinking about these organizations today. What if we've been looking at the CIA all wrong?
Just let that one sink in for a minute. A global venture capital firm that just happens to have a paramilitary wing and zero oversight. It's not a government agency in the traditional sense. Thinking of it this way is absolutely crucial because it unlocks the next evolution of this whole financial architecture, a world where the line between national security and corporate profits is getting blurrier by the day.
And this new model has a name, intelligence-backed equity. Here's how it works.
You have these seemingly private tech firms, right? But they're founded by intelligence agents who are working under what's called non-official cover, or NOC. That means they have no diplomatic immunity if they get caught. Now, the agency doesn't give them a big bag of cash for seed funding. Instead, their investment is geopolitical protection and access to incredible data. What do they get in return? Well, these companies become the eyes and ears of the state, its sensory organs, feeding back critical data and insights from every corner of the globe.
And this is where we get to the great paradox of our time. We're living in this age that's supposed to be all about radical transparency, right? We have blockchain, open source data. Everything is supposed to be out in the open. But the reality? The truth is, the biggest financial moves, the ones that really shape the world, are actually becoming more hidden, more opaque than ever before.
So what's the big takeaway here? Look, understanding all this isn't about some fantasy of beating the system. It's not about that. It's about giving yourself a new lens, a new framework for understanding what's really happening when you read financial and geopolitical news. It's about learning to see the hidden incentives that are driving the headlines.
And you could actually start to see the invisible hand at work if you know what to look for. Here are two big signals. First, watch for friction. Whenever you see the US or the UK suddenly creating obstacles, things like sanctions or mysterious security concerns around a rising economic rival, that's a pretty good sign that someone is trying to manage their growth. And second, follow the stability. When a place that's been high risk and volatile for years suddenly becomes the new hotspot for Western investment, you have to ask yourself, who or what is manufacturing that newfound stability behind the scenes?
And that really leaves us with one final big question. In a world that's absolutely flooded with data, where we're promised total transparency, is it possible that the most important moves, the ones that truly define our future, are more hidden than ever? In this era of supposed clarity, maybe the real power lies deeper in the shadows than any of us can imagine.